Thiruvanaikkaval, our final destination. We are making our entrance to the North Tower. We are in the outer prakaram. The wall is 25 feet high and 2 feet thick throughout and runs for a mile all around. It's about 7 o'clock in the morning and not very crowded, but you never know. By the time we get inside the main sanctum, it could be very crowded. This is the flagstaff. There are gopurams inside the second precinct. The outer precinct is basically for the halls. The second precinct has the large hall with 786 pillars. It also has some gopurams inside. The third and fourth precincts also have smaller gopurams. The pillars in these ancient 1,000-year-old temples are always fascinating. There are places for pilgrims to sit, take rest, look around, and look at all the pillars in the hall and the carvings on them. These were beautiful, peaceful places of community and not just a tourist place that it has turned into today. A beautiful high-ceilinged corridor, a big hall that takes you to the main sanctum inside. A very good darshan of Jambukeshwar, and you can see that the idol is below ground level, seeable through a trellis of 9 holes representing the 9 orifices of the human body. You can also go past that, and there is a priest there in almost total darkness that is just lit by fire lamps, and you can see the idol. I couldn't quite see the springs around it, but apparently it is half submerged always in water. But because it was so dark, couldn't quite make out. And then we got our prasad and spent about 2 minutes, and they were managing the crowds pretty well, about 5 or 6 people at the time in a very, very small, tight space. It's unusual for such a large, huge temple as this, running over 20 acres. The actual sanctum is just maybe 10 feet by 10 feet or smaller. It is a very beautiful experience overall. It is an awe-inspiring temple once again. It's a grand temple of Tamil Nadu, Thiruvanaikkaval. There are 108 Shiva lingams in the outer prakaram. You can see the southern gopuram in the distance, and there's the high wall that continues all around. This is a grand temple. What a lovely place to end our journey in. It is ancient, it is grand, it is high-ceilinged. And there is a uniqueness to the way you approach the lingam, the water lingam, in that tiny, deliberately sized down enclosure, half submerged in water. There is an interesting temple legend about how Thiruvanaikkaval got its name, Thiruvanaikkaval. Once upon a time, long time ago, when there were 2 Shiva bhakts who were very competitive, who fought with each other, but their common element was their devotion to Lord Shiva. At some point, one of them cursed the other into becoming a spider, of all things. And the other one, maybe just before he became a spider, cursed the first one to become an elephant. That's the way the story is, okay? And it is said that the spider and elephant continued to be devotees of Lord Shiva, and they came here to the Lord Jambukeshwar, to this place of the Kaveri, and continued to worship the Shiva idol here in the form that it was in those days. It was said that the spider, seeing the harsh sunlight hitting the idol, spun a web to provide a bit of shade over the idol and also to stop the fallen leaves from the surrounding trees from falling on the idol. The elephant, meanwhile, got water from the nearby Kaveri river and filled it up in its trunk and came here to wash the idol every day. And at a certain point, the elephant noticed that the idol was covered with what it assumed to be dust, but it was actually the spider's web. So the elephant blew water over it and cleaned the idol and washed off the cobwebs. This happened for a few days till the spider hid and found out what was really going on. And out of its frustration and anger, it got inside the elephant's trunk and bit it, killing the huge elephant and killing itself too in the process. Shiva, it said, was impressed by the massive devotion shown by these two beasts and granted them moksha. In a later life, the spider, it is said, became a Chola king. Depending on the dates, maybe the early Cholas, maybe around a couple of hundred BC, a couple of hundred AD, nobody knows for sure. But it was a historical figure called Kochanganan Cholan. He was said to be the spider reborn as a Chola king. And he's the one who started building this huge temple. And at least the genesis of it is credited to Kochanganan. And it is said that even in his rebirth, he remembered his earlier foe, the elephant. And the reason why the main idol here is in such a tight enclosed space, it's about 4 feet in height and just about 2.5 feet in width. You'll have to squeeze your way through and bend your head, which is what we did to get into that space. And the reason for such tight proportions was because Kochanganan didn't want even a baby elephant to enter that place, leave alone a full-grown one. So he made sure that his old foe could not enter in this new avatar of the idol. It's a beautiful story. So, the later Cholas, we know for a fact, by the time we hit the 9th century, we know for a fact that a lot of them added all these outside prakaras and the 796 pillared hall, as well as lesser shrines and the gopurams and sai were all added by later kings, followed by the Nayakas and the Vijayanagara kings. That way, the historical part of it is clear. It is always that the exact origins of these ancient temples that are a mystery, and it's probably nicer that way. Devotees are free to really imagine what it must have been, and sometimes the stories may seem far-fetched or idealistic or too much. But when it comes to devotion, it is like that. I mean, if people who love their gods take these things very seriously, and we must respect them for that sentiment. Facts don't always matter, perhaps. When these grand old temples like this one are not crowded like today, maybe because we came in early and today is not a festival day, you're not fighting with the crowds in queues or in cages, being pushed around, hungry and sweaty. Then you realize that these huge spaces are just a wonderful reservoir of peace. You can just sit here for hours, really. It is so beautiful, peaceful, with some people here and there. There are enough little spaces where you can look around, walk around, sit around, and a couple of hours can go by just like that. Maybe that's what these old temples were meant for also, to learn to be at peace with oneself and to meditate. This is part of the outer prakarams, a small gopuram inside the main one. We are going back towards the northern entrance, the way we came. It's where Shiva's consort, Akhilandeshwari, as Parvati is known here, she has a shrine over there. And we will go out the way we came. There's a temple elephant on the right over there. We're back at the Lemon Tree Hotel for breakfast. And what we didn't find in Kanchipuram, we are finally finding at the last element of water, the Kanchipuram idli. We didn't find it in Kanchipuram, but we are finding it here. You have the Kanchipuram idli with a lot of dynamite, 140. There ends our 5-temple trip over 5 days, the Pancha Bhoota Sthalams of air, space, earth, fire and water, and where the roads lead next. We'll find out shortly. The one other fascinating thing about the Pancha Bhoota Sthalams, especially three of these temples, the one in Kanchipuram, and the one further north in Kalahasti, and the one south, which is Chidambaram, all these three, separated by at least 400 kilometers, I think roughly, are all on the same longitude, 74 degrees east. That is quite amazing that these temples have been built on a straight line long before there was any GPS or longitudes and stuff like that. I don't know of anybody who seems to know the reason of how they were able to do a thing like this those days. But they did it. Can't be an accident. And there is a bit of a referencing that one of the Jyotirlings in the north, probably Kedarnath, is also on the same 74-degree east. That is, of course, more than 1,000 kilometers away, so 1,500 kilometers away. That is quite something. Those people of those days probably knew something, and that's amazing. See you the next time, wherever the road takes us. Bye.